Well, it's good to have you back, mate.
Great to be back.
Here we are, Property Now. I'm Michael Carbone. My friends call me Carbs. Here with Chris Ferris.
Hey, Carbs. How you doing, mate?
Mate, always good, man. Good to
Been
have
a
you
while.
back. Well, we've just been talking about your hay fever,
Sorry,
which has kept you sidelines from the podcast.
but I'm back.
You are back, and I love bringing you in for these one-on-one chats when important stuff happens in the industry or in property in general. And we've seen there's been a lot of talk, social media, news, et cetera, about the first home buyer guarantee scheme, this 5% deposit scheme, which has been introduced by the Albanese government ahead of time as well, to help get first home buyers into the market. I want to unpack this with you.
Yeah. Well, look, it's been in for a while. I think they brought it forward. It was supposed to come out early next year. It's already been a scheme that has been available with limited slots in the past and different price caps and income caps. I think the really important thing here is that a lot of it has changed and it's substantial to the Australian property market. I think it's going to have implications for the Australian property market as a whole, and keen to unpack what those changes are.
Let's look at it because it's been in place for over a week now. I can already see the market changing and moving because of it.
Yeah.
What have been the changes? Because obviously you mentioned it was capped. It's now uncapped.
Okay.
Unlimited spots, right?
Yes. So
Yep.
let's run through it. So it
Let's
was
go.
capped in the past. So let's run through. There's really three key changes that people need to be aware of. And there's some hidden traps and some pros and cons. I think let's run through those later as well. But from the 1st of October, so it's already in place, of this year, 2025, you can buy a property with a 5% deposit. There were income caps in the past, so typically 125,000 for singles and 200,000 for couples. That has now changed to no income caps, so completely gone. So you can be earning. So the couple that was earning 200,000 is now also competing with that high net worth couple that's never bought a property that is earning 1.2 million a year, for example.
No cap.
No cap. No blue cap. Yeah. So income cap's completely scrapped. So if you haven't bought a property within the last 10 years, for example, that you can, so you're a first home buyer, you're now no income caps at all. First change. Second big change is actually the price caps. So the change in the price caps. And I'll talk about the three major markets of New South Wales, Vic and Queensland, what it was and what it's gone to in the main areas, not the regions. So in the main areas, in the capital cities, so New South Wales is the largest change. It's gone from 900,000 price cap to 1.5 million. I'd like to chat on what that looks like from a mortgage perspective at a later point as well. But in Victoria, in capital cities, it's gone from 800 to 950. In Queensland, it's gone from 700 to 1 million, so which is interesting. So probably suggesting that Queensland market has really had a bit of an uptick in the last couple of years as well. And in WA, SA and Tassie, it's 600,000.
So it's designed to keep up with like the median house prices, right? Because there was a point where Sydney capped 900K.
Did you say designed to push up or keep up? Yeah.
Both, probably. Yeah. So, okay, well, that leads me then, I guess, to... Oh, there was more as well, right?
Third one,
Yeah,
which was unlimited spots. So there was typically 35 or 50,000 spots, just depending on where you're looking, available per annum. It's now open slather. So no caps on amount of people that can apply. Which to me, if you wanted to really throw fuel on the fire of the property market, congratulations, government, you're achieving your objective, because it's just going to throw absolute fuel on the fire.
And what it basically means, right? So being able to buy with 5%, typically if you had less than a 20% deposit, you're paying LMI.
Correct.
Right? So lender's mortgage insurance, that sort of gets tacked onto your mortgage. It is a little bit more because there's a little bit more risk. But what's essentially happening is the Australian government is saying we will take that risk. We will cover that LMI.
They guarantee the 15%.
They guarantee the 15%. So
if you're buying with 5, so you can still buy with a 10% and use. So look, the game changer here is the fact that there's no LMI.
Yep.
So to be really clear, I think people were saying before, I can buy with 5% now. You could have bought with 5% deposit before, but you're just paying LMI, which can be anywhere from 1% to 3%, just depend on the property price. Just depending on how high that LVR is. So you're still buying with. You're just not paying the LMI. So that's the savings, or that's the advantage. So it is. Don't get me wrong; it's still an advantage, but it's not that investors or downsizers can't buy with a 5% deposit. They can. It just depends on the loan structure, and they can be paying with the LMI.
Okay, let's start with pros. What are the benefits of this actually happening and starting.
Look, one of the biggest benefits is time. So it does, as we know in what we do here at Composite, we know it takes time to save for a 5, 10, 20% deposit. And if you look at let's look at the comparison between 5 and 20%, right? It takes many, many more years to save for a 20% deposit than it does for a 5% deposit. That's one implication. The other implication is if you want to save for a 20% deposit, the market moves during that time when you're saving. So it's a double whammy. So not only do you not get into the property market today with it if you had a lower deposit because it takes more time to save, the longer you're out of the market, you're not taking advantage of those price rises that you could be capturing today. So what it means is you can now get in faster and you can save on the LMI. So they're really the two key pros that are out there. But I think like it's always been out there. Like we've had in the past, I think I mentioned my property story in the past where I borrowed 105% back in 2012. And I used my parents' property as guarantor for me if we had the luxury to do so. And eventually got them out by the property price increasing and then refinancing them out when it was below 80% loan to value ratio. So it's not a new concept. It's almost that the government is replacing or adding Bank of Mum and Dad. It's now the Bank of Government. That is now guaranteeing that 15%.
And they're scaling it, right, as well. And I think you're right in that people can get in. It's probably maybe a little bit easier for people to get in by virtue of the fact that they're not having to save as much, right? So that on the surface is good. People getting into property, we like that. We want people to be able to own their homes by the time they retire, right? It's
very important.
Fundamental, right? I think as a nation, as people, as Composite, as us. So that's fundamental. If you are getting in if you're ready to get in, so this announcement happened last week. If you bought a property that week using it, probably good. Right? Yeah. But surely when there's more competition, we all know what sort of happens in property, and we're already starting to see it in the last week or so. We're already seeing things start to shift because there's more people out there. Let's talk about the cons because there are some traps, right?
There is. There's actually a couple. And to talk on holistically as a market, when there's two components to property, and this is looking at it very high level, is demand and supply. Now, this policy goes towards the demand component. It doesn't affect supply. So again, we've just got policies that are increasing demand, which is in turn going to increase property prices. There's no other way of looking at this, whether it's in the last week or in the next year or so, it's going to continue to add fuel to the property price flames, I suppose. So it's going to add that component. The other part is, I think people are forgetting there could be stamp duty implications too. So it's not just purely 5%, that's all I need. You need to obviously get some advice as to whether you're going to be paying stamp duty. Most first home buyers do get exemptions up to certain caps per state. That varies per state. So look into whether you still need to also have 5% plus stamp duty. So that could still work out to be a circa 7-8% deposit of the total price that you need if you got to pay stamp duty.
Yeah, I believe in New South Wales, the stamp duty applies over that $1 million. So if you are taking full advantage and going to 1.5 mil, there's going to be stamp duty implications there.
Well, I mean, what are your thoughts? Like 1.5 mil, if you are buying with a pure 5% deposit and stamp duty, you're borrowing what, 1.425, which is like $8,000 a month repayments.
It's pretty crazy. So for a first home buyer, you got to understand that monthly repayment. So you're borrowing you're going to the full max 1.5. 5% leaves you with leaves you with 1.425. That's over $8,000 a month right now on current interest rates. Now interest rates, we've had some recent drops, but off the back of the recent data and the last RBA meeting, they've probably pushed back timing on any potential future rate drops. So you're going to be looking at $8,000 per month on your mortgage.
That's currently. If rates do go back up, which I think people think that they've gone up 13 times in the past over the last couple of years and it's come back a couple of times. We might be on the downward trajectory and it's going to go back to where it was during COVID. It's just not the case.
Let's assume best case scenario. Let's assume it just stays the same for the next year. Can you afford $8,000 per month on your mortgage? What does that mean?
Nearly $100,000 a year after tax.
But what does that mean for your lifestyle? What does that mean for everything else? With groceries going up, insurance is going up, utilities going up, petrol going up, can you do 8K per month?
So do you think it's the trade-off? Do I want to be a property owner now, borrowing? And you don't have to go to the max caps, but we're talking at the max caps of 1.4 mortgage, right? What do you think it means? Like, how many people in their early to late 20s or early 30s are actually looking at it going, yeah, I'm going straight in with a 5% deposit now, full mortgage? Because what does that actually do to their lifestyle?
I still think you need to be looking at what you can afford, right? So just because it's available up to 1.5 mil doesn't mean you should go for it if you can service that loan. Like you can't max yourself out. And I'd say that no matter what, whether you're using this scheme or not, the issue is still, the affordable, like Sydney house prices, for example, it's still probably unaffordable for some of these people. So do they need to look? I was speaking to a first home buyer yesterday, a cousin of mine who's doing some work for me at my house, right? Great little chippy. Shout out to Mark. They bought their first property, he and his partner, in Adelaide, right? Because that's where they could afford. Now, you wouldn't be able to do that and use this scheme because you need to live in it, right?
Well, that's
a trap.
Let's get to that.
Well, let's talk about that trap.
Because to your point, just because you can buy a 1.5 million, let's say you got 75 grand, right? So you might qualify and plus the stamp duty. So you got 7,500 grand to pay the 5% deposit and the stamp duty.
Yep.
Just because you can buy a $1.5 million property doesn't mean you can afford a $1.5 million property and the associated loan that comes with it. That could be a real dangerous trap.
Yep.
And the other part, which is I think really looking into the detail of this, is typically in the past, so when I used my parents' property for a first home guarantee, I didn't use the first home buyer's grants at that point. So I was out because it was rented out at the time. But if I wanted to move in, I could move in. If I wanted to rent it out, I could rent it out, and no implications for stamp duty or anything like that. Under this scheme, as long as the guarantee remains, so if you're paying down your mortgage or even doing interest only or principal and interest, if that guarantee is still in place, so your LVR is still above that 80%, you're not actually able to rent the property out.
Huge trap. I think that's a huge trap, and people need to consider how long it will take to essentially get the government guarantee out.
Correct.
Right?
So there's a couple ways to get them out, right?
Yep.
So obviously the most basic way is paying down principal and interest, and over the next probably 7 years, you'll have enough to refinance them out at 80%, assuming no property price growth.
Yep.
The other way to get them out is there is property price growth of 5-6%, and you can get them out over time simply by refinancing.
Yep.
But where the trap comes in is if in, say, you've gone 1.3 mortgage and you're paying 7-8 grand a month and you lose your job or financial circumstances change, that can happen in the normal circumstance, right? But in that circumstance, you may be able to rent it out or whatnot. Under this circumstance, if the guarantee is in place, you can't simply go back and move in with friends or move in with mum and dad and rent that property out to get some extra income. You can't technically, and whoever's policing it is another whole story, right? But you can't technically go and rent that property out, which is a massive trap because you could just be stuck there with a property that you can't rent out, a property that you can't afford to make the repayments, and probably worse, if it happens within 6, 12, 18 months of you purchasing, maybe a property that hasn't grown in property price growth and you could be making a loss.
Yeah, 100%.
I think that's a massive trap.
Too many traps. I actually hate this idea. I think it's
Why specifically that?
Because I think all we're doing is increasing demand. Yes, on the surface, I want first home buyers to get into the market.
And you think you increase prices in turn?
You are increasing prices, of course you are, because all of a sudden you have more demand. We're not building more, right? These 1.2 million, these goals that the government has set.
Is that still around?
Nowhere near. The goals are still there. They're not talking about it because they're nowhere near achieving those goals, right? But so we're increasing demand, and we're now increasing demand in a higher price bracket. So what happens is that median house price continues to grow because there are more people with more money and more access to schemes like this that are now in the market that are now what? But
what do you do though? If you're a first time buyer now, the game is set.
Yeah.
You've got the board, the pieces are laid, the game is set. You can't change the game. So you either decide not to be part of the game because you think it's unfair, or you join in.
It's a good question.
So what do you actually do?
You have to get into the game. You have to figure out how to get into the game.
Does the gap widen even further?
I would consider my options elsewhere. So I would say I go back to the cousin who bought in Adelaide and go, hey, okay, do I look at trying to max out in Sydney and I have to live there and use this 5% guarantee scheme, or do I look at staying at home, rent vesting, buying something else in another market, putting down a 10, 20%, using LMI, whatever, and actually being conservative about my repayments and what I can afford. And I get in, but I don't get in this way, because all we're doing is pushing up. The 1.1s will become 1.2s, the 1.2s will become 1.3s. And people say, yep, but that maxes out to 1.5 eventually. And then what happens is everyone that's selling their $1.5 million property, they're then moving into the next bracket and they're now competing for the $2 million properties and they're pushing those up. And there's this continual domino effect that just keeps prices moving up and inflating, and it's just not right. It's silly. I hate it.
I feel like if people had a budget of $900,000 before with a 10% deposit,
yeah,
do they stick to that $900,000
Of course
budget,
they don't.
or do they go, oh, I can borrow a little bit more, I
Of
can now
course they
buy
don't.
$950 or $1 million. So their budget changes, right? So it almost overnight, by the stroke of a pen, changes property prices.
And even their intention might be for their budget to stay the same. But when they go to the auction and all of a sudden everyone's there with a bit of extra ammo, their budget goes up. It just happens naturally because you need to compete. And that's what a competitive market does. This scheme has increased demand tenfold at scale. It has increased demand, and the supply issue is still a problem.
Well, it's getting worse, the supply issue. So you've increased more demand, adding fuel to the fire. It's incredible.
Yeah.
And then you're not increasing the supply component at all.
Yeah.
They're doing what they can with planning, but the fundamental fact is we're not building more.
Yeah. And we're not just guessing, right? I'm glad that we've had this, you've had hay fever, and we couldn't have this talk until, a week, 2 weeks after it started, because we're already seeing, like, you look at socials, you're seeing auctions that look like festivals because people are out there. That's affecting rents. You're seeing properties in Bondi where the rental queue, the lineup is around the corner. Like, people are out, people are already moving, demand is already shifting, and it's been 1 week. So what happens in a year?
Well, is it that initial demand is coming through and then it falls off, or is it just it continues? I think what's going to happen is it's going to continue with the property price increases. And I think the reality is with government, it's in no one's interest in government for property prices to fall.
No.
Unfortunately, the government does have a hard job, in fairness.
Of course.
They have a hard job to keep property prices rising for the majority of the economy and the ecosystem, and the buyers that people that already own their homes outright or just buying, they need to keep it back up. But they also have a hard job of how do we get the next generation through. The problem, I think, that also comes in, again, from a psychology perspective with the government is, if I'm the government and I'm now on the hook, if property prices have 2 years, let's go back a step. Yeah. Let's say 100,000 people use this for the next 2 years. So you got 200,000 properties out there that are at a 95% LVR, maybe 90 to 95%. If we then have after that a period where property prices stay the same or drop 2 or 3% for a 2 or 3 year period, we're going to have some serious pain, because we're now at a point where we're at high LVRs.
Yeah.
And so those will be that category of buyers who may not be able to afford payments, and if we're seeing property prices drop off, they may not be able to afford those payments, and we may see a bit of an issue in market. But the secondary fact is now the government has even more of a vested stake to see property prices increase. Yeah. They're an indirect owner, or they're on the hook effectively if property prices dramatically fall and people start losing money. They're guaranteeing the balance.
They're creating a volatile subset of people that are getting in now at a really high LVR, at a really high monthly mortgage, because the boomers and the Gen Xers that purchased years ago, they don't. If property drops 3% a year for the next couple of years, they're okay with that.
Yeah, I mean, they bought it for a loaf of bread.
They could sell and still make money if they really had to, or they can hold and it never even crosses the mind. So that they're okay with that. It's these new people that are coming in at these high points. They're volatile especially for the first few years. It's a massive issue.
You're right. It's that new generation coming through. From 20 to 40, it's everyone in between that wants to buy. That was aspirational. Now actually getting in. And
we talk about it. The issue with government is always it's 4-year terms. They need quick results. They need headlines. What's the headline? Cost of living. housing affordability. Let's fix housing affordability. Let's help first home buyers get in. Like, it's a headline.
Plus,
it's a quick fix.
Anthony Albanese, it was an election promise that he has to deliver on, and he has, in fairness.
Yeah.
But it's just, what does it do to property? And we know it's going to increase values. And then the other parties, now government has even more of a large stake in seeing property prices continue to increase.
Yep.
That's probably the fundamental issue, right?
Yeah. So we hate it. What's your thoughts?
Look, I think overall, I think
I don't want to speak on your behalf.
Look, it's going to increase property prices.
Yeah.
Whether is that going to be more or less than what property prices were already going to increase? That's unknown. I think, look, anyone that wants to get in property and has a long-term objective and wants to have a home for their family, I think it's a great outcome. I think anything that gets people into property faster is great, but it is going to push prices up. So people that had a $1 million budget may be paying 1.1, 1.2. But on the flip side, I think people really need to understand some of the traps within the scheme. If their circumstances change, they may not be able to rent it out. I think these are really important intricacies that people should consider.
Yep.
But I mean, from my perspective, if it allows a young person or a family to get into that home that they've been looking at or eyeing out for their family for the long run, I think it's a great outcome. I really do.
Yep.
Do I agree with 95% LVRs? Not really. Did I do 105% LVR? Yeah, I did. But property prices were very different back 15 years ago.
Yep.
But we might be talking in 15 years' time saying property prices now are very cheap.
We might be.
And we probably will be.
We might be. We probably will be. I think my final thought would be, you mentioned earlier, like, the game is changing, but does that mean you don't play the game, right? So I still think it's important that as a young person, play the game. Get in. You want your goal.
The rules aren't going to change.
Your goal needs to be home ownership. The rules won't change, but this is just, consider this another option that's out there. Yep. It doesn't mean you have to use this option. Think about it. Think about, do you want to live there? Do you want to rent it out? What's do you want to live at home? What do you want to do?
What do I do?
Yeah, if things change, what happens? So consider this just another option that's out there. Understand it, educate yourself on it, and then go with the best option for you and your circumstances.
Would you use it?
Would I use it right now?
If you're a first-time buyer, would you use it?
Would I use it as a first home buyer? If I was ready to move right now, I might. But it depended on if I wanted to. It would depend on if I wanted to live there. To be honest, no. I'll rephrase it, because the first home that I bought was an investment property. I was a good Italian boy living at home with my parents. Hey, Michael,
you want to buy a house?
I bought a house. We lived there for 6 months to take advantage of the first home buyer grant. Then we moved out and we rented it out, and I stayed at home for a couple more years.
It's funny you say that, because my first property
Yep.
was an investment property as well.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. So I could, to do that, I couldn't use this scheme. So no, I wouldn't use it.
Okay.
All right.
There you go.
Well, a good episode, a short one. We need to do more of these. We've got a few more good episodes coming in the next few weeks, so watch out for that. We've got a very famous Instagram property influencer.
Can we say who or no? Or?
Let's just say this is what Property Now. No.
This.
We'll see you next week.
This is Jason He, the sexiest voice in property, here to tell you that the Property Now podcast offers opinions on Australian property news for informational and entertainment purposes only, and general in nature. It does not take into account your objectives, financial situation, or needs. It does not constitute professional advice. Always seek expert guidance before making any property-related decisions.